You're pulling in $80,000 a year. Not bad, right? You've been smart with your money, you've got some savings stacked up, you're finally ready to stop renting someone else's dream and start building your own. So you crack open Zillow at midnight on a Wednesday, and every house that isn't actively being condemned by the city starts at $400,000. The kitchen still has those laminate countertops that were already outdated when Friends was on air. The carpet is that depressing shade of tan that whispers, the previous owners gave up on life. There's wood paneling in the basement that hasn't been cool since the Carter administration, and the listing agent has the nerve, the absolute nerve, to slap the words charming starter home on it. And yet, the bank is nodding. The lender says you're pre-approved. Your realtor is already texting you about scheduling tours. Your parents won't stop bringing it up at Sunday dinner. So what exactly is the holdup? Here's the holdup. You genuinely cannot afford these houses, not in any real, sustainable way, not without spending the next decade financially suffocating while pretending everything is fine on Instagram. And the part that should make your blood pressure spike, not a single person involved in selling you that house is going to tell you that. Real quick before we get into it, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing in this video is financial advice. This is purely educational. Please talk to an actual qualified professional before making any major money decisions. Now, here's what we're doing today, and the real estate industry is going to hate every second of it. We're going to figure out what a house actually costs on your salary, not the number the bank hands you with a smile, not the number your realtor uses to keep you excited, the real number, the one that doesn't end with you choosing between groceries and a water heater repair. Let's talk about where we actually are right now, because the numbers are genuinely uncomfortable. The median household income in America sits at $83,730. That sounds like enough. That sounds like you should be able to walk into a normal neighborhood and buy a normal house without it becoming your entire personality and your entire budget. Except the median home price is sitting around $415,000. So the math we're all somehow expected to make work is earn $84,000, afford a $415,000 home. That's 5 times your annual income. 5 times. If that ratio makes you feel slightly insane, you're not broken. You're just finally seeing it clearly. But everywhere you turn, someone is telling you it's fine. The mortgage broker is handing you an approval letter. Some finance influencer is telling you to house hack your way to freedom. Your college roommate just closed on a 3-bedroom, so obviously it's doable. What are you missing? You're not missing anything. What's actually happening is that the word affordable has been quietly redefined, and nobody sent you the memo. So let's fix that right now with actual math. You've probably heard of the 28% rule. It's the personal finance guideline that says your total monthly housing costs, mortgage, taxes, insurance, HOA, all of it, shouldn't exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. That's the benchmark built around you actually having a life outside of your mortgage. Banks operate on a completely different number. They'll approve your loan as long as your total debt-to-income ratio, housing plus car payments, student loans, every credit card, stays under 43% of your gross income. 43%. And here's the thing nobody in that lending office is going to volunteer. Those two numbers are not the same conversation. The bank's approval doesn't mean you can afford the house. It means the bank has calculated the maximum financial pressure you can absorb before you completely stop paying. That 43% ceiling isn't a comfort zone. It's a breaking point dressed up in professional language. Let's put real dollars behind this so you can actually feel it. We're not talking about a luxury property. You pull together a 10% down payment. That's $40,000. That number probably represents 5, maybe 6 years of disciplined saving. You now have a $360,000 loan at current rates, around 6.09% as of early 2026. Principal and interest alone, roughly $2,150 a month. But we're nowhere near done. Stack on property taxes. Depending on your state, that's $300 to $650 a month. We'll use $450 and call it conservative. Add homeowners insurance, and thanks to a climate that's making insurers increasingly nervous, you're looking at $250 to $350 monthly. Call it $300. Then there's PMI, private mortgage insurance, because you didn't put 20% down, and the system charges you a monthly fee for that. Another $275 gone. And maintenance, the standard guidance is 1% of your home's value annually. On a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 a year, or $333 every month. And that's the optimistic version, where nothing catastrophic happens, which if you've ever owned anything with a roof, you know is not how this goes. Total that up, your actual monthly housing cost, $3,508, not $2,150, $3,508. That's the real bill. So under the 28% rule, what income do you need to carry that without your finances unraveling? Around $150,000 a year. The bank, running their 43% calculation, would approve someone making $98,000. That's a $52,000 gap between bank approved and actually fine. $52,000 of financial breathing room that simply disappears the moment you sign those closing documents. And here's where the math stops being just uncomfortable and starts being genuinely absurd. Only about 20% of American households earn $150,000 or more, which means 80% of American households cannot comfortably afford a home that costs less than the national median. We haven't built an expensive housing market. We built a housing market where the average home is out of reach for the average family. That's not a political opinion. That's arithmetic doing damage. Let me show you what this looks like when it's your actual life. A household earning $80,000, right around the median, saves up their 5% down payment. They submit the application, the lender approves them because the numbers technically fit inside that 43% window. They get the keys, they take the photos, they feel like they finally made it. Then the statements start arriving. Their true monthly housing cost lands at $3,191. That's 47.9% of gross income. But after taxes, that $80,000 salary becomes roughly $4,667 in actual take-home pay, and $3,191 of it is already gone before they've bought a single bag of groceries. That leaves $1,476 for everything else in their life. Every single thing. Now layer on the actual cost of being alive. Utilities, groceries, car payment, auto insurance, gas, student loans, health insurance premiums. That stack alone runs about $2,482 a month. They have $1,476. They're over $1,000 short every single month before they bought one piece of clothing, paid a medical copay, or put a single dollar toward their future. The bank signed off on this loan. The numbers say it was a catastrophic mistake. And when something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, there's no cushion. The car needs new brakes. That's $800 charged to a credit card that's already carrying a balance. The air conditioning unit quits in August. That's $5,000 they don't have, financed at 24% interest. This is what being house poor actually feels like from the inside. You have a deed with your name on it, and you cannot afford to live in, fix, or enjoy the property attached to it. Now, let's look at the other side of this, because the contrast is important. A household earning $200,000 a year buys a $500,000 home with 20% down. PMI doesn't exist for them. Their total monthly housing cost lands around $3,770. That's 22.6% of gross income, comfortably inside the 28% guideline. After taxes, after housing, after all their regular expenses, after dropping $2,500 into retirement accounts and another $500 into an emergency fund every single month, their budget still works. That's what financial comfort looks like inside a house. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you cold. That scenario requires a top 10% income to pull off for a home that's only 20% above the national median. Let that land. You need to be among the highest earners in the entire country just to comfortably afford a slightly above average house. We have normalized something that should sound completely unreasonable. Now here's where this gets even more layered, because that same $500,000 doesn't buy the same life depending on where you're standing when you spend it. In San Francisco, $500,000 gets you roughly 600 square feet, a studio condo. You'll likely have a roommate. The HOA will run you $500 a month. The other side of your wall has a drum kit and no concept of what a reasonable hour is. In LA, you might land a one-bedroom in Koreatown. Not the West Side, not anywhere near the beach, Koreatown. In Austin, $500,000 puts you at a crossroads, a downtown condo with no yard, or a brand new 5-bedroom with space and a driveway 20 minutes outside of the city. In Atlanta, that same budget gets you a 4-bedroom in a solid school district, hardwood floors, 2-car garage. In Cleveland, $500,000 is genuinely elite. You're walking into a 4,000 square foot historic home with a yard that would make a Californian weep. The income needed to afford the median home in San Jose is over $400,000. In Cleveland, it's under $62,000. That's not a rounding error. That's a completely different financial reality existing within the same country, under the same flag at the same moment in history. The housing crisis isn't broken the same way everywhere. It's broken completely different and deeply specific ways depending on your zip code. Which brings us to the conversation that makes people the most uncomfortable. Your parents bought a house when they were your age. You've heard this, probably at a family dinner, probably more than once. What they aren't saying, not because they're trying to hurt you, but because they genuinely don't have the full picture, is that they were operating in a fundamentally different economic reality. In 1980, the median home cost roughly 3 times the median household income. Today, that ratio is 5 times. Your parents bought homes priced at 3 years of their salary. You are being handed a market asking for 5 years of yours. But weren't interest rates insane back then? Yes, absolutely. Mortgage rates in 1980 hovered around 13% and spiked above 18% in 1981. Monthly payments stung, but the purchase price itself was something a normal person could actually reach. They could build a down payment in a few years, not a decade. And when rates eventually fell, which they did, they refinanced. Here's what you cannot do. Refinance the price you paid. The sticker price is permanent. The rate is negotiable. They got both sides of that deal. You're only being offered one. And the debt picture was completely different too. College tuition in 1980 averaged $738 per year. Your parents didn't start their adult lives carrying $40,000 in student loan debt. The average new car payment in 1980 was $153. Today, it's $748. They built households on a single income because that was actually financially viable. Today, 2 incomes are often just the price of entry to qualify for the mortgage at all. And even then, you're barely inside the threshold. The generational math doesn't lie. Baby boomers now account for 42% of all home purchases, and roughly half of them are buying with cash. First-time buyers have fallen to just 21% of the market, a record low. The median age of a first-time buyer has climbed from 28 in 1991 all the way to 40 in 2025. 40 years old. That's the average age at which an American can now afford to buy their first home. And a growing number of them need help getting there. 7% of first-time buyers are now using inherited money for their down payment. Generational wealth isn't an advantage anymore. For many people, it's the only viable path in. Now let's get into the costs nobody volunteers until after the ink is dry on your closing documents, because this is where the real financial damage quietly accumulates. The mortgage payment is just the opening act. Research puts average hidden homeownership costs at $21,400 annually. That's $1,783 per month on top of your mortgage. Maintenance, utilities, property taxes, insurance, and internet combined. And before you tell yourself you'll be careful, understand that careful doesn't matter when the roof doesn't care about your budget. Water heaters give out every 10 to 12 years. Replacement runs $600 to $2,500. Roofs last 20 to 25 years before they fail, and when they do, you're looking at $10,000 to $30,000. HVAC systems have a 15 to 20-year lifespan. When yours quits during a heat wave, the bill lands between $5,000 and $12,500. None of this is optional. None of this is avoidable. These are scheduled financial events disguised as surprises. Then there's homeowners insurance, which has quietly transformed into its own separate crisis. Premiums have climbed 48% nationally since 2020. Florida homeowners are now paying between $5,800 and $15,000 per year. That's over $1,200 a month just for the insurance policy. Louisiana and Oklahoma are trending the same direction. Climate change is not a future problem for your insurance bill. It is the current problem, and it's compounding. Industry projections show another 8% annual increase through at least 2027. Property taxes are the other slow bleed most buyers don't fully account for. New Jersey sits at the top with an effective rate of 2.23%. That's $9,541 per year on a median-priced home. Texas, which proudly waves the no state income tax banner, averages property taxes of 0.8%, meaning a $400,000 home costs you $7,200 a year, or $600 every month just in property taxes. And unlike your mortgage, that bill goes up every year, indefinitely, for as long as you own the home. Now let's add the debt most buyers are already carrying before they ever submit an application, because this is where buying power silently collapses. The average student loan payment falls somewhere between $200 and $536 per month. Average car payment, $532. If you're among the 20% of Americans carrying a car payment above $1,000, the math has already made the decision for you. Every $250 in monthly debt obligations strips roughly $40,000 from your mortgage qualification. Run the actual numbers. You're earning $120,000 a year. You've got $400 in monthly student loan payments and a $532 car payment. Your pre-mortgage debt-to-income ratio is already past 11%. Under the bank's 43% ceiling, that leaves you about 32% of your income for housing, a maximum monthly payment around $3,200, which gets you into approximately a $400,000 home. And remember, that number is using the bank's definition of affordable, not yours, not the one that keeps your life intact. And before any of that even matters, there's the down payment, which is where most people's homeownership ambitions quietly die without fanfare. A 20% down payment on a $415,000 home is $83,000. The median American household saves roughly 5% of gross income per year. That's roughly $4,000 a year. At that pace, stacking $83,000 takes you 21 years. Even if you go full discipline mode and force $1,000 a month into savings, you're still looking at 7 years of sacrifice. And that's assuming the target stays still. It doesn't. Home prices have been climbing 3 to 5% annually, which means every year you're saving, the finish line is moving further away. You're not running a race. You're chasing a vehicle that's already pulling out of the parking lot. So let's address the question everyone is quietly hoping I'll answer with good news. Is the market going to crash? Is there some correction coming that finally resets everything back to something a normal person can afford? No, I'm sorry. That's not the trajectory we're on. Every major forecasting institution, NAR, Zillow, Redfin, Fannie Mae, is projecting flat to modest price growth somewhere between 0 and 4% heading into 2026. Mortgage rates are expected to settle around 5.9% by year's end, possibly dipping into the high 5% range. That's better than 7%, nobody is pretending otherwise, but it is nowhere near the 3% pandemic-era rates that briefly made homeownership feel almost accessible to regular people. Here's a structural reason a crash isn't coming. 81% of existing mortgage holders are locked into rates below 6%. Over 21% of them are sitting on rates below 3%. Those people are not listing their homes. Why would they? The moment they sell, they have to turn around and buy something else at today's prices with a 6% loan. So they stay. And when existing homeowners stay, inventory stays. And when inventory stays low, prices stay elevated. It's a self-reinforcing loop with no natural pressure valve. Inventory is creeping up, about 10% higher year over year, but we're still sitting nearly 18% below pre-pandemic levels. Homes are spending a median of 66 days on the market, up from 59 last year. The market is technically softening, just not at any speed that actually helps someone trying to buy right now. And here's a stat that should reframe everything you've been telling yourself about renting. Buying is more expensive than renting in all 50 of the largest metros in the country. Every single one. Nationally, the average mortgage payment runs 38% higher than the average rent payment. In San Francisco, buying costs 191% more than renting. If you've been lying in bed at night feeling like renting is just throwing money into a void, you can stop. In most markets, right now, renting is the mathematical rational decision. The typical break-even point, the moment buying actually becomes cheaper than continuing to rent, is somewhere between 7 and 15 years in expensive cities. Most first-time buyers don't stay in their first home that long. So where does all of this leave you? Let me be straight with you, because somebody in this conversation needs to be. If your household income is under $140,000 and you're seriously considering a $500,000 home, I need you to pause. Genuinely. Stop and pause. You are standing at the edge of a financial decision that will define the next decade of your life, and not in the way the brochures suggest. I don't care that the lender handed you a pre-approval letter. I don't care that your agent keeps saying this is just how it works now. The math isn't impressed by either of them. The math says you cannot carry that house without it carrying you down with it. But you do have real options. None of them involve buying something you can't afford, but they are real. The first option is relocation. Nobody wants to hear this one, and I understand why. But if you're pulling $100,000 a year and trying to plant roots in San Francisco or Seattle or New York, you are fighting a structural battle that your income cannot win. That same $100,000 in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or St. Louis funds a genuinely comfortable life and a home purchase that doesn't require financial gymnastics. Roughly 20% of remote workers made exactly this move in 2025, not because they gave up, but because they ran the math and chose to win somewhere the math let them win. The second option is buying significantly less house than you've been picturing. If $300,000 sits comfortably inside your real numbers, but everything around you is listed at $500,000, you look harder. You accept a longer commute. You choose a smaller footprint. You choose the neighborhood that doesn't photograph well for social media, but keeps your financial life intact. You optimize for stability instead of appearance. The third option is house hacking. You buy a duplex, occupy one unit, and lease the other. Done right, that rental income covers 50 to 100% of your mortgage payment. Or you buy a single-family home and rent out the spare rooms. It's not the vision most people have for home ownership. You'll have people in your space, but your effective housing cost drops towards zero while you're building equity every single month. The fourth option is patience. You keep renting. You save with real discipline. You let your income grow, and you wait for conditions to shift in your direction. This might take years. That is a completely acceptable outcome. There is no award ceremony for buying a house before you could actually afford one. There is no trophy for being house poor at 34. The only scoreboard that matters is your own financial health, 5 and 10 years from now. Here's what I genuinely need you to walk away understanding. You are not the problem. You have not failed some basic adult test that everyone else is passing. Home prices have outrun wage growth so severely and for so long that what felt ordinary and achievable for prior generations has quietly become a luxury purchase for most Americans. A $500,000 home is not a starter home. It is not something the median income can absorb without serious damage. It is not something worth contorting your entire financial life to reach unless your income can actually hold it steady without acrobatics. The real question was never whether a lender will technically approve your application. Lenders get paid when you borrow. Of course they'll approve you. The real question is whether that house, that specific house at that specific price on your specific income, will actually make your life meaningfully better. Or whether it will simply redirect your money to a bank for 30 years while you hold your breath every time something makes a noise in the walls. The math is telling you something. The bank is whispering that you're approved. The agent is already picking out comps. Your family is wondering what's taking so long. But you are allowed to look at all of it, the real numbers, the real costs, the real monthly reality, and decide that it doesn't add up. Not at this price, not at this income level, not right now. That's not giving up. That's not falling behind. That's using information to protect your own life instead of letting other people's comfort with your decision-making drive you into a financial corner. Your salary buys less house than the market wants you to believe. Knowing exactly how much less and making your decisions based on that truth might be the most important financial move you make this decade.